Welcome back. We're live from the NROC, the National Results Operations Center, right here in the capital, Pretoria. This is going to be the hive of activity very, very soon. Municipal elections take place every 5 years. It's a mix of hybrid system, making use of both the ward system and the proportional representation, or PR system, is used for the municipal elections. Look, I've been covering elections for many years now, but even I need that refresher course. You tend to forget the granular details when we're dealing with municipal elections. But let's break it down. We've got the touchscreen, the magic wall, as some call it. So let's go through it. So the various elections that we do cover is the national election. There we go. National election. We have the provincial election. And let's get you another nice color. So the provincial election. But this is what we're dealing with. The municipal elections. Voting day, you will receive 2 or 3 ballots. So let's have a look at in terms of the voting ballots. There we go. So this is for the metro. Remember the district council? This is for the metro. So in the metro, if you live in a metropolitan council, there you go. You will be given 2 ballots. The yellow ballot, so say it's a grey and white, grey ballot. This is the white ballot and grey ballot, which is the ward elections, as well as that means that basically you will vote for the person that will act or speak on your behalf. But this is back to the yellow ballot, which is the PR ballot and the vote for a political party. It gets a bit trickier when we talk about the ballot papers for local and district councils. So here, you will be getting 3 ballots. So if you live in the local council, you'll be given 3 ballots. The yellow ballot, which is the PR, a vote for a political party. The white ballot, which is the ward elections, and that is voting for a person who can speak or act for you. Then the other one, which is the green ballot, that is the PR ballot and the vote for a political party. So basically, in a nutshell, that is the various ballots that you will be getting. Now, it becomes a bit more complicated when you're talking about allocating seats. My small brain can't handle that. I'm going to bring in a better mind. Tselane is joining us live. I think this is one of the first interviews I've done in person. We are vaccinated, so we are pretty safe, but this is one of the components about local government elections, isn't it? This time around, dealing with COVID-19. Good to have you, sir. Welcome. He's a political analyst, election expert. I was just saying earlier on that you have about, 8 general elections under your belt, 4 provincial and national, as well as municipal, 4 municipal. All that experience. Talk to us about this moment when special votes kick in. What goes through the minds of people at the IEC and those out there?
Well, today becomes a very important day in the history of election management body. It provides the IEC with an opportunity to check whether its systems are in place. It's almost like a dry run, even though the extent to which we are going to be having people participating in the elections is much lower than what normally happens on an election day. But it does give an impression of what is likely to happen on the day of the elections. For instance, if your ballot papers are correct at the right voting stations, then you know that one big hurdle has already been dealt with. And then you do not expect on the day of the elections, therefore, to be having ballot papers that are belonging to another municipality in another municipality. So it helps in terms of just making sure that the systems that are going to be used on the day of the elections are indeed in place.
So break it down for us and help us understand, because as I was saying earlier on, that calculation in terms of allocating seats can get a bit tricky for the layman. How would you explain it in terms of getting, those seats allocated to those who have won?
It's a very complex system, but in general, and I'm going to be trying to simplify it. You take the total number of valid votes, and then you divide that according to the number of registered voters plus 1, and then that gives you a quota which you then use for a particular political party, to allocate seats on the basis of that. So you'll take total number of valid ballots allocated to a particular party, then you use that particular quota to make a division, and on the basis of that, you allocate a number of seats to a political party. But it's a very complex one, but I've tried to simplify
that's
it.
Fine. And look, we will be talking about this over the next couple of days to get a better sense of where we are in terms of local government elections. But in terms of the parties, they can change the order of the PR list, isn't it? Subject to IEC procedures.
Yeah, I mean, after voting, that can happen. Yeah.
All right. So that's basically in a nutshell in terms of the mechanics. I tap into that because I know you go through that. I mean, you went through that. You have a wealth of experience. Looking at the campaigning in general, looking at the build-up to local government elections, all the court cases, etc., what's your impressions?
Look, the Commission has had its preparations interrupted by quite a number of processes. Firstly, there was that process where there were quite a number of voices within the society that were saying the current conditions do not allow for free and fair elections. And the Commission listened to those voices and ultimately on the basis of that requested Justice Moseneke to lead an inquiry as to whether the current COVID conditions allow for free and fair elections. And as we know, Justice Moseneke did make his findings and submitted that report to the Electoral Commission. Now, we had a very divided opinion in terms of where the IEC should have gone with that report, or based on that report. Some of us believe that they should have gone to Parliament, because Parliament is the only one that could deal with Section 159 of the Constitution that requires a municipal council to serve a term of 5 years.
And you called it early. You foresaw that we are probably going to have the elections on November 1st. Why?
Because for three main reasons. One, that as I've indicated, the Commission is supposed to have gone through to Parliament and make this not their problem, but the parliamentary problem. So if they had actually gone to Parliament, it would have been much more easier for Parliament to deal with that particular aspect. They are empowered in legislation to deal with any amendments that are required in terms of legislation. The second one was that I was not convinced that the Commission, based on the report that they received, had actually been able to find proper legal grounds to ask for postponement. I think they took it for granted that the report on its own, it's a legal advice for the Commission, and therefore they did not actually do a lot of work to try to structure their argument in terms of their own responsibilities. For instance, when the Commission mentioned the fact that one of the reasons why they wanted postponement was that political parties were not able to have rallies and campaign freely. And then other political parties started saying, but we can, so it's not an issue. It started now creating a divided opinion. Now, Commission was left with some political parties that are saying we can't proceed under these circumstances. Other political parties were saying they can. But if the Commission had only structured the argument strictly on its operations and to indicate how the COVID conditions are affecting its own operations, like for instance, the voter registration, which they had mentioned, or all other logistical arrangements that they have, then it was not going to be a contested area. But also if they had also focused on a voter, to say that it is important for a voter to be able to go for voter registration, to be able to do certain things, and then on the basis of that, then they would be dealing with this as an uncontested terrain, because they are the only people who represent the voters. Political parties cannot come in and say, but we represent the voters, because they only represent a tiny minority of the voters, which is their constituencies, and those people who are actually voting for them. So on the basis of that, I thought that it was just too weak. And then also the fact that they went to Constitutional Court, I felt that it was likely not to be receiving what they actually had wanted.
Which brings us to today. We already kicked off special voting. November 1st is the day, opens 7 a.m., closes 9 p.m. I'm not sure if the viewers caught what just happened a short while ago, but the power cut for a bit. But I guess the reassurance that the IEC gives us as well, things come up in seconds. It talks to the credibility, it talks to the transparency, it talks to the efficiency of getting a big operation like this running, because the viewer, the voter, is watching all this. The issue of electricity in the build-up to the local government elections, not only is it a consideration with regards to the logistics and how we're going to run this, but also it's become a political and service delivery issue, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the current situation of electricity interruptions, it's a major issue in terms of preparations of the elections. Firstly, it's in terms of access of people to the voting stations. If the roads, the traffic lights are not working, it is likely to delay people from actually reaching the voting station, particularly those who are using cars or any mode of transport to go to the voting station. But also in terms of the just logistical preparations of the Commission, making sure that each and every voting station has got is able to operate, even after hours, because the stations are supposed to be closing very late. But even the equipment that the Commission is using at all different voting stations is an equipment that requires electricity to be functional. So those sorts of issues are issues that are likely to have an impact on the preparations of the Commission for these elections. But fortunately, as you've correctly pointed out, they've got Plan B in terms of dealing with eventualities where the electricity is interrupted or we have load shedding.
How far are we, sir, from doing away with paper and moving electronic here in South Africa?
I think we are moving very, very closer to that point. I'm one of the people who's been advocating for electronic voting for a long, long time, because electronic voting really simplifies things. I mean, recently we had elections, even though it was for the SRC in Venda. The stations closed at 7, and within 15 minutes the results were available, having audited and having checked everything. So the biggest problem in South Africa in relation to the elections, it's actually exhaustion by the electoral staff, particularly during counting. So if you look at the objections that the Electoral Commission receives, those objections are largely as a result of the mistakes committed during counting, because by that time, the majority of electoral staff, they are exhausted, they've been at the voting station almost a day before, and then they've been trying to deal with this thing, and therefore they are likely to commit quite a number of mistakes during that particular process. In 2016, we had about 205 objections that we had to deal with as a commission at that stage. Now, I can imagine now how many objections that the Commission is actually going to be getting. And the majority of those, as I've indicated, are as a result of what actually happened during the counting process. Now, if you have an electronic voting mechanism, counting will happen automatically, and then the results will be given immediately after voting has been completed.
Transparency, accountability, and ethical conduct, key in any elections in anywhere around the world. How difficult is it to achieve that?
It should not be that difficult, particularly in the context of South Africa. The fact that at the voting station level, political parties are allowed representation through party agents, and that observers are also allowed at the voting station. And again, at all other levels, including here at the National Results Center, you've got all the political parties represented, the media represented. So in terms of transparency of the processes, I think the Commission has really done a lot, and we can be proud of that as a country, that the systems that have been put in place do allow for very transparent processes. People can actually see what is happening from the time when the voting stations open until when the results are announced. And in addition to that, once the results are announced, the result slip will be pasted on the door of a voting station so that everybody can actually see. And then that result slip will have the signature of the political party agents that would be there at the voting station.
Right.
So I think we're doing quite well there. Where the Commission obviously has got a lot of work to do is to make sure that it instills the issue of ethical conduct on the part of all its officials at all different levels to make sure that nothing untoward happens in the administration of the elections.
Before I let you go, sir, we are having an election on a Monday. It is a long weekend. We have 26.2 million people who are eligible to cast their ballot. What's your best educated guess in terms of turnout this time around?
Well, it's likely to be slightly lower. And the reason why it is likely to be slightly lower, it is because normally the election day is on a Wednesday. Now, once you put the election date on a Monday, people take sometimes Friday off, knowing that they've got now a long weekend where they don't have to go to work on a Monday, and then it has an impact and does have a disruptive element in terms of the voter turnout.
Yeah. Tselane, thank you very much indeed, as always instructive, always helpful. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, Tselane, there is political analyst, election expert. I don't know if I call him an education expert, but I think it's part and parcel. It's educating us, telling us how it's done in terms of the allocation of seats as well. We'll put this up on social media as well to get a better understanding. And we will point you in the right direction in terms of the IEC website as well, the SABC website as well, to better understand, break down elections 2021, municipal elections 2021.